Hello and welcome to this Thin Air episode. The channel is named Thin Air, that's why it's called Thin Air. In this episode we're going to look at how to create your own jet plane in the Microsoft SDK. So to start off with, we do as we usually do with these projects, is that we take an existing sample. If you have installed a Microsoft SDK, the Flight Simulator SDK, you will get a folder on your C drive, most likely, and in that folder you will have a folder called samples. In this sample folder we'll take the simple aircraft and just copy to our project folder. Never play directly with these files that you have in the SDK, in the samples, because you want to keep them as they are, because it's really easy to mess up with the files and the file structures and so on, and that renders these files useless after a while. So once you've done that, just close that window so we don't mess around with it, and then we can start to have a look on how this looks like. So we have a name of the folder. This one we can change, of course, but let's keep everything as is. We have some files here that we will recognize from other projects, and this is a simple aircraft project XML file, for instance, packet definitions and the packet sources, but we also have another file, a folder called sources. This is a little bit unknown to me why we have it here. It says max. I don't know why these are here actually, but I guess they are used for the pilot that is in this plane that we will see a bit later on. To be able to do anything with these files, we will need to start the Microsoft Flight Simulator. So after the usual 2 minutes startup to get the simulator up and running, first we need to go into the general options and make the developer functionality available to us. You have to click it on and to save that. Once you have the developer mode, you will find this menu in the top, and you need to go down to the help and download the SDK installer. Then you can start using the SDK. What we will do is that we will go to an airport where the sun is up and shining. It doesn't really matter where you are, because airplane can be anywhere. So we just take an airport and a runway, and then you can take a simple aircraft that doesn't take too long time to load up, because we're gonna load in another plane anyway later on. So if you remember the file structure we had on our project, simple aircraft, there is basically 3 folders there and an XML file. And that indicates that this project hasn't been built yet, and that means then in return that you can't use the aircraft yet in the simulator. So what we will do once the simulator has fired up to that airport, I maybe took a too complicated airport, take some more time to load up, I will take another one next time, is that we will open this simple aircraft project and we will build it. So here we are at the airport, and I will immediately switch to the external view, because working with airplanes usually is easier to be outside the plane than inside the plane, because we won't do any cockpit stuff today anyway. So as I said, we will open the project, simple aircraft project, and we will soon see 1 or 2 more windows coming up. So the aircraft disappears for a while and will come back. There it is again. So at this stage, if you look back in the folder, not much have happened here. We still have 3 folders and we have the XML file. So we need to build this project, and this project consists of marketplace data, And this data here is actually it's the thumbnail of the aircraft and so on, how much it will cost and blah blah blah. We don't bother about that at this stage. We will probably never bother about that, because I think creating planes for the simulator in the end is a huge task. On the actual sim object, that is the airplane, we have some data here that is pre-filled in, and it's basically a name, and this name is the same as for the project. Then we have the type of the project. In this case, the sim object is the airplanes, and then we have where we have the data to this project, and we will put this data, the packages, once they are built. So we will start do a build all. Before we do that, you can bring front the console window console, or in my world here in Sweden I use the Ö key. I doubt you have the Ö key, but it's the key to the right of the L key. It's not the N key though. We will clear this so that we will spot easily any problems during our build. So this console window will be populated with all kind of messages, not only from your project but also from other projects that you have in the community folder. So it's a good idea to clear all and then build, and to see what messages you get on the screen. This can take some time to build. Now it's been built, and we see a lot of white text and yellow text. White text is very unharmful, but the red text are not as good. So, do we have a new airplane now? Well, we can go into the Windows aircraft selector. We can scroll down because it's come into the end usually, and I can't see any new airplane here at the moment. If you look now into the folder for your projects, you will see that you have this packet internal, or whatever it's called for, and you also have this folder called packages. Packages is the end result of what all the work that we do, and that will be then transferred to the community folder if you want to play with this airplane later on. So we did a build, but we didn't get any airplane to play with, so we probably just need to close this project, open the project again, and to see what happens. There are some unwritten rules in the SDK, and it's usually you are working in the blind. You don't know what you're doing, what you're not doing, but a build, closing and opening a project is a good idea, is to reboot it, so to speak. I close the console, and now at the end of my aircraft list we have a new aircraft which is called Simple Aircraft My Company 02 My Company, and we can load this aircraft. So this is the sample aircraft that's included with this SDK kit. As you can see, the plane didn't end up very well on the concrete, so let's reload it once more. Hopefully it will land on all three wheels, which it did this time. So this plane is fully functional. Something you should know: if you are in one of these windows, then the joystick functions won't work on the plane that you're looking at. So you need to click on the actual simulation window to be able to control the aircraft. So if nothing is happening while you're pulling the throttle, click in the main simulation window. So now we have an airplane. It has a cockpit also, but the cockpit is not very fancy. There is no instruments. There is a guy in there actually which we don't want to have there really. So we will try to remove him a little bit later on. This plane can be flown as any plane in the simulator, and if you want to keep this plane as it is, the only thing you now need to do is that you go into the folder, the packages, and you copy this folder. Really, you copy what's inside the folder, this one, and you copy it to your community folder. Then when you start up the simulator next time, this plane will be available to select in the game as the other airplanes. But as I said, I want to make a jet plane, I don't want to make a propeller plane, so we need to do something about that. If we go down into the, I will shut down some windows because you're gonna need screen space. If you select the actual sim object, you can now load this in an editor, and the editor is quite advanced. There is a lot of things here. I think the Simple Aircraft My Company 02, this is the name that was brought up in the list. I would like to see the just called something else. We can always change this, but there is a lot of dependencies on these names. I haven't figured out totally yet. That will be next project to check out why if you just change a simple name here, sometimes the rest won't follow. So what you can do here is that you can go into various settings of the airplane, and you can start fiddling around with lot of things, weights, the brakes, and for instance the engines. Here you can see that the engines, they are now it's a type piston. We would like to change that to jet, and you can go ahead and do so, but it won't work. I've tried that before and it didn't work very well. I think there's an airplane coming down to land on me. Let him do so. I'll just show you something, typical thing here in the simulator, that once you are in here, now that you are in the engine tab, you'll see that there's a red box where the engine should be supposed to be situated on the plane. You can press the gizmo, and then you can start moving the engine back and forward and up and down and so on. This doesn't move anything on your model. It doesn't move any inside engine, it doesn't move any propeller, it doesn't move anything else, but it will influence the simulation, of course, that this plane will be a little bit more back heavy now than it used to be. I think there's a plane coming down on me. Let's see what it is. Oh, that was a big one. Okay, so if you make a change like this, you have to go and do File, Resync, or Save and Resync. If you do Save and Resync, you will obviously save every setting you have done. If you only do a Resync, then it will only change the model that you have in front of you, but it hasn't been saved to any files and so on. So if we now have a look on the plane again, you will notice that the engine has moved a little bit more backwards. So that's basically how many of these things are done. It could be like the cameras, for instance. Where is the cameras mounted? Where is the pilot camera? And so on. And you can start moving it around inside the plane to get the view you want to have, or set the view you want to have, and so on and so on. So the first thing to convert this to a jet plane is that yes, and if the engines are shut down like this, you have to press Ctrl E to start it up again, you know, the normal way you have a simulation. And now you should need to bring up the mixture, but we can't do that because we don't have any button for that. I don't know the shortcut for it. So what you can do is you can always reload the plane and it will come back with the engine on. Okay, So we will now go ahead and replace this plane with a jet plane and to see what happens. So we will close this project. The plane will stay. We can even pause the simulation if you want to, but we don't need it in this case. So to design a jet plane is not so easy. I will show you something else first. This one. This is the plane that we actually see. Now the textures are missing for some reason, but this is the actual plane that we had in the simulator that I have brought into Blender. And in Blender you can examine how the plane is drawn, and you can also see if there's any animations going on. I know that there is animations also on the main landing gear, but it's not visible here. So I think that is a bug perhaps. I think all the animations should be triggered at once, not only the front landing gear for some reason. What I have noticed here is that there is some empties. These points in air is called empties, and they are usually tied to something. So if I move the gear, the empty stays, but if I move the empty, the gear comes with it. So this, for instance, it can be useful for rotation, to make the wheel rotate, so you could animate the wheel rotate and so on. But an obvious thing would be to actually control the surfaces on the airplane using these empties. But I haven't been able to replicate that function from here to the simulator, so that didn't work for me yet. So I've had to figure out why. But anyway, we're gonna look on the plane that we are going to export. So I made a very simple jet plane. I made a very simple jet plane. This is the simplest jet plane in the world. This is the Saab Draken. It's a plane from the 50s, from Sweden. It was built in Sweden. It was a very high efficiency plane actually, in that respect that it had a huge engine, and it was an interceptor. It was designed to fly quickly up very high and to intercept bombers from that era. I think I made some animations on the wheel, as you can see here, but as I said, that didn't work in the end in the simulator. I also tried to make some animations for the control surfaces, but that didn't either work. To be able to import and export models from the flight simulator, you need to have the MSFS toolkit for the Blender, which is free, that you can download, and you can also use this to export models to the simulator. So we will come to my project down here, simple aircraft, and in the package sources we have the sim object, and then there's the airplane, and there's the name of the airplane, and then we have the model here. As you can see, there is 4 LODs, level of detail. There is the one that's when you are very close to the plane, and these are when you are farther away from the plane. So in my case I would need to model my airplane like 5 times and reduce the vertices each time, so that in the end the plane would be just more like a box, but it would still look a little bit like an airplane. So this is the one you see far off in the distance, and this is the one you see normally when you're flying the airplane and so on. So I will start to replace this model. The only thing I need to bother about here is actually to put my textures into the correct folder, and the textures are stored in the texture folder. And how do I know that? Well, if you look here again, packages, package sources, sim object, airplanes, my company, blah blah blah, model. Here's the model goes, and here's the textures, where the textures go. Now there is, as you can see, 3 of these available. Which one is which and why there are 3 of them, I don't know. I think Asobo perhaps knows. But we will start off to replace the model here on top. So let's check if there's anything here we need to do. We should, in this case, working with airplanes, we should not generate XML file. I haven't ever tried it actually, but I think that the XML file in the model here, folder here, is not the output you will get when you save it from Blender. So I would leave this as it is at this stage. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the export. We'll use the first LOD. We won't ever be further away from the plane anyway, but if we ever become farther away from the plane, it will change back to the plane we had previously, but we don't need to bother about that at this stage. Is there anything else here? Any modifiers could be in the animations. Let them be. They don't work anyway. So let's export this. So now it has exported both the model for the airplane, and it also has exported the textures. So we can go and have a look. You can see that these 2 files here are created today, the 3rd of December, which is today, and this is the old ones. So that is fine. And since I use the same file names here, I don't need to go in and change anything in the XML file for time being. If we go to model 01, we can see that this configuration file actually points back to the previous folder, so there is no changes there. So I don't know what it means really, but these 3 are basically the same. In the texture folder we have 2 new textures. These are the textures that I've been using for this aircraft, and they need to be a power of 2. Basically you need to be able to divide them with 2. So these numbers you see here on the size, 1480 times 936, are divisible by 2. Or 8 actually should be. So let's have a look. 936 divided by 8. Sorry, yes, divide by 8 it has to be. I will use the calculator here. 936 divided by 8 is a whole number, 117. So that will work. Let's have a look on that one. And this is 408. Let's have a look if that is also divisible by 8. I should maybe know that by head. 51 of course. And then we have another number, 1478. Divided by 8 is not divisible by 8. So it's 184.75. So that won't work actually. So what you do then is take the large number part of this, or the smaller part, 184. Sorry, I can't show you my my iPhone. 184 times 8 is 172. So let's go and edit this with let me see here. I don't want to do that. I don't want to open it with GIMP. I know I have it somewhere here. Sometimes GIMP is not present. I don't want to blah 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 blah. I know you can think. Let's do it like this then. GIMP. And let's go and see if we can pull this file into GIMP here. So we need to go here and scale this image. So I said instead of 1478 it should be 1472. Let's keep the the other size as is and hit scale, and then we just export this in place and replace, overwrite the Dragon 2 as is, and then we just close. Oh, sorry, I missed something there. Export, and then we need to close it. Discard changes. Now this should be a tiny little bit smaller than it used to be, 1472, and that is of course then hopefully dividable by 8, which it is. Otherwise these textures won't work. The other textures are still perhaps in use by the other LODs, so they can stay for the moment as they are, and yeah, we'll see what happens basically. There is these other folders which are also keeping some textures and not knowing which ones are the ones you should put in where. I just copy these textures in here so that they are available also in these texture folders in case needed. Texture base I think is for the pilot, so we can see this guy here, UV drafted out here, so that he can stay as he is. Okay, so we have replaced the model, the first LOD at least, and we have replaced, put in some textures. In the actual model file it knows where the textures, what the textures should be named and so on. We don't need to point these out. So we should be able now to open this project again. Let's do it like that. And then let's select it and take some time to think about it. As you can see now, the plane was reloaded. If I go to aircraft selector, you can see that the plane here is the one we used to have here. If I load it again, you will get the exact same plane. Nothing has happened because we haven't built this project yet. So we need to select the project, which is the blue text, and we need to press build packages. Before we do so, let's go and clear the console and build packages to see what happens. Okay, so the compiler has done its tricks, and as you can see now, the plane was reloaded, and now we have the plane as I had it in Blender. So that's nice and dandy. If I go to the aircraft selector again and reload this, it will start the engine, and as you can hear, the plane is still propeller driven even though it's a jet plane. So it's quite funny actually. You can actually fly it now, and it will fly exactly as the other plane. I won't take it up to the air for the moment because it will just fly as the other plane. Nothing funny or strange about it, but I want to point out something here while we are here, is that if you go and load this plane into the editor, and is that the geometry, for instance, or the aerodynamics, or the, let's say here, where we do have that, weight and balance, no, contact, view, no, not that one, geometry, yeah, that was one. You can see that the SDK believes still this is the same old propeller plane. So the simulator doesn't care about the actual 3D model in no way. So it can be looking as what you want. It can be a flying cat, it can be a flying horse or whatever. It will fly just as that propeller plane that we had previously. So this is a little bit shame, but it only means that because we have not said to the SDK how large our wings are, so now it's calculating the lift and the drag using the old wings and the old geometry that we had on the old plane. I won't bother about replacing that yet because that's not what I want at the moment. It's also quite a huge task to do so, so I won't do that, but I would like this airplane to become a jet plane at least. If you take a look on the engine again, you can see that the engine is located somewhere there at the moment, which is fine. Another thing is that is maybe of interest if you're playing around with this is that to have a look on this debug window. So when you're pulling up the throttle, you should see that the thrust increases from the engine. It's always good to have some thrust if you want to fly. Okay, so let's go and how to make this plane to a jet. Well, you could play around with the editor. You could go in here, engine, general, change it to a jet, and then you have to fill in billions of different variables and blah 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 here to make it a jet plane and to fly it and to work like a jet. So what we will do instead is that we will steal these from another plane. Let's take, for instance, I think that we take one of the existing planes that are in the simulator already today. CJ4. Let's see how that. I remember that is a dual engine jet. That is doable. So let's use the CJ4. Steal some data from that plane into our plane to make it to become an jet plane. So for security, let's close this project. So the computer is not looking in these files for the moment. And if you go into the folder where you have your airplane, you will find that there is a file called engines.configuration. You can open this with Notepad, and all the numbers you see here is the same numbers that you will find in the editor. So you could edit this using a text editor, or you could use the graphical editor that is included in the SDK. So what we will do now instead is that we will open another window, and we will go to the community folder and go up a little bit to the official folders, and we will locate the CG4. Go to the sim objects, airplanes, so put CG4, and we'll just copy the engines. Where is that then? There it is. We just copy that one, and we will copy it to my plane, and we will replace it. It doesn't immediately make the plane a jet. As you can hear, it's still running there in the propeller. So I think we need to go and open the project again. And it could be so that we also need to compile it again to make it a jet. Sometimes you need to compile, sometimes you don't need to compile. Well, at least the propeller stopped. Could be so that it has become a jet. Let's see here. Now it still says piston. So it means that the changes we made in the file hasn't taken effect. So let's go and make a build of these packages. Since I took the file from another plane which is working in the simulator, I don't suspect there should be any compiling problems, but we did have a crash. So this happens time to time, that the SDK crashes, so you better get used to that. So we are restarting the simulator, and I've chosen a much smaller airfield this time to start from. It won't take as long time to load in anyway, and this actually looks like grass only, but it doesn't really matter. So I know from experience that this simple aircraft that we are working with now, it crashed when we did the compilation. So I would say that let's remove the packages folder, and let's remove the package internal folder for a while, or just delete them, not for a while, sorry, forever, because these files will be rebuilt once we open the project and rebuild it anyway. So let's open the project again. And then, as you remember, we need to build it before we can see the airplane actually appearing in the simulator. So, at this stage, we have the project opened, and I'll show you something else. This is never a good sign. If this loading editor is grayed out, then it's something wrong with your project, and it's really hard to fix to make it work again. So try to avoid that. If we go to the aircraft selector, we can see that we don't have the plane we used to have in the end here, which was the simple aircraft. So as I told you, we will need to go and build these packages again. Hopefully nothing was really destroyed when we did the build. The source files should be remaining as they are. It's only the output files that can be corrupt in some way. Let's see what happens when it does the rebuild process. The rebuild process usually frees up the whole simulator for a while, and then it comes back after a while. Okay. I didn't notice too many red things here. There is always some red things over there, but let's have a check if we now have the plane available or not. We don't have it, so we have to close the project, and we have to reopen the project again. Don't ask me why. And don't ask me why I knew this. It was just a gut feeling. Okay. And it reloads. Now we have the loading editor in place at least, and we have the simple aircraft available again that we can load in. Okay, so where were we? Yeah. We were actually to make this a jet as it is. Let's have a look. Now in the general, now it's the jet as you can see. So remember that when these files, they are like in two places. One is the source position, and the second position is the build position, and the build position is the one that you see on screen. You will also notice that the engines are where they used to be on the CJ4, so we will try to move them into the correct position. So first of all, we will remove one of the engines because we only have one, and we will then move this engine to roughly the position where it should be in this airplane. Bear in mind that you know, weights and balance and blah 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 are not anyway any good, but I think the plane will fly anyhow. So now the engine is roughly in place, almost, so you need to look it from top-down view first to make it right in one view, and then you need to go to the front view and place it correctly in that respect. As you can still see, the two red boxes are where they were previously. They haven't moved anywhere. So let's save and resync. And once that is done, we should only have one red box, and it should be where the engine actually is. Another thing we could play with before we try this plane out in the air is that we can change the cockpit camera. Now it's located, as you see, somewhere on the wing. So let's try to find where we have the cameras pilot. And what I'm looking for is a gizmo button, but in this case it's actually initial position. It says get from game, so it means that we need to be located where the guy should be sitting. Let's go into the developer camera instead, because then we can move a little bit more inside here. And let's say that we would like to have the guy sitting let's see here, how did we do that? It's always these buttons in various graphical programs are different from the ones, so you don't remember which buttons to press, but it's the Alt key is the holy key in this case. Alt and the mouse. Let's put it on the maybe we'll go a little bit forward like that. I don't want to be inside the plane because I don't see that much. On top here is very unsexy view, so let's put it somewhere there, which is nice, and then we press the get from game. Now we can go back to the normal camera. We can go and file, save and resync, so this new position is now saved. It's actually another thing that we could change is where the wheels and the brakes and so on are located. We could you see that the brake points here, they are not really where the wheels are. Contact point 0, for instance, here. Put the gizmo on, I would put it more forward. Contact point 1, gizmo, I will put that more into the plane. Point 3, gizmo, I will need to move that. Now I have this juggling with these various buttons again. More inside the plane, like that. Contact point 3, I don't know what it means, where it is. There's a gizmo for that. Well, maybe some kind of contact, you know, in the tail, what they're thinking about. Well, you figure out this by yourself. Anyway, file, save and resync. Otherwise these positions are not saved. Now they are saved. Now you can see that there are actually wheels are actually where the wheels should be. We can close that. And well, another thing again here is to maybe to have the engine window up and the debug window. We need to start our engine by pressing Ctrl E, and it sounds a little bit odd for a jet plane, but it will sound a little bit better once it's started up. Let's see if we can make this plane going. We need to get the RPM up. It goes very, very slowly. Probably we need to put in some mixture here again. It's just doing it without any mixture. So let's go to the there is no fuel injected or something like that. Let's reload this, hopefully to get it into a position where the engines are actually working. Let's see if we can. Yes, there we have some thrust. So now it flies with one jet engine, and you can of course make it more powerful in the settings. But remember still that this is still the plane. The actual plane is a normal middle-winged aircraft that we had, but well, it does fly like with a jet engine, so you can actually fly it a little bit faster than, you know, the propeller plane that we had previously. And it can go pretty fast actually. As you can hear, the sounds are not the correct ones. The only sound we have is the wind noise actually. So we would need to steal those sound files from the CG4 also and put it into our project to get the sound that was the original sound, more or less. Well, I can say that the animations for the rudders and so on doesn't work, as I told you. I haven't got that to work yet, but I think this is a good start to play. And this way you can build your own plane that will fly a little bit maybe faster than the planes we have currently in the brakes, though, do work. I think they should, but now we're on grass, so it doesn't really affect too much braking force. But yeah, the brakes are working. So that was a quick small tip how to get going with the SDK and how to convert existing plane to a jet plane. And of course, if you find a model that is pre-made, and you can put it inside the simulator if you use the correct format on the files. I don't want to crash into those trees. So if you use the correct files, they will be shown here, as you can see. Okay, thanks for this episode from Thin Air. And maybe I'll come back in the future with some more hints and tips and tricks. It's not so easy to speak English. Bye bye.